Okay, students, so this objective is to go from rational exponent form to radical form. So when you think of rational exponent, just think of um, anything with a fraction as an exponent. So rational exponent, just think of fractional exponent. Same thing as fractional exponent. And then radical form, well, when you think of radical form, just think of uh, a radical sign, like radical notation. Now, one thing that you might not have known is, let's look down here at this square root of 7. Square root of 7, well, we use square roots so much that we leave out this little part, but a square root actually has a little 2 right there. So this is the square root of 7. So if I'm going, this is in radical form. If I want to put this in rational exponent form, if I want to write this as a fraction, that's the same thing as writing 7 to the 1/2 to the 1/2 power. So whatever my exponent is here, so if I put, let's write a general term here. If I have an exponent of n, so an nth root of a number, so let's just put of a number b, well, that is the same as writing it as b to the 1 over whatever number is right there. So I think the easiest way to do these is just to see a lot of them. If we have 5 to the 2/3, well, we can break this down using the rules of exponents and say that it's the same thing as 5 to the 1/3 squared. This is the same thing. If I put this power, if I multiply this power by this power, that gives me 2/3, and I'd be right back to where I started. So since this is the same, well, I know that this is the cubed root of 5, and I have this square here, right? So I have the cubed root, but it's of 5 squared. I can't forget that square there. So this becomes this. And let's try this one down here in green. If I have the 4th root of 6 squared, well, again, I'm going to write 6 squared, but it's with the 4th root, so I can think of this whole thing as to the 1/4 root. And if I multiply those out, I get 6 to the 2 over 4, which is the same thing as 6 to the 1/2 power. Alright, we'll have a chance to practice a lot of these. Let's look at some more examples. So here's one similar to your homework. Alright, write in exponential form. Alright, so the first thing is, let's take this inside the fraction. Let's take this part. And this becomes 4r. The whole thing is to the 1/3 power. Now I also have this whole thing is to the 4th power, so I can think of this whole thing right here is written to the 4th power. So now this is the power of a power, so what I get is 4r, the whole thing is to the 3/4 power. Now this is important that you write the whole thing out and that you write it in parentheses, because each one of these is to the 3/4 power. This is equivalent. You could write this to show that they're both to the 3/4 power, but it's easier just to write the parentheses, so this is how we'll write it. Alright, let's do this one here. Write in radical form. So I'm going to go to radical form. So the first step is, let's write it as a complete fraction without a parenthesis. So this is the power of a power. I need to multiply the exponents. And now I can see that that's the same thing as writing n to the 1/5 power multiplied by 4, or you could look at it like this. All of these are equivalent. N to the 4th, the whole thing to the 1/5 power. Either one of those. So what that gives you is I have n to the 4th, the whole thing, it's the 5th root. So I have this 5th root of n to the 4th. Alright, let's look at another example. Okay, in this case it says simplify, so let's simplify this first one. Well, 64 to 2/3, that one's hard, so let's break it up. Let's say 64 to the 1/3, and then square it. Well, 64 to the 1/3, what number multiplied by itself 3 times is equal to 64? Or if this helps you, what is the cubed root of 64? And the answer to that is 4. So this becomes 4. So I have 4 squared, and 4 times 4 is 16. Let's do a little bit more complicated one. Now the big thing here is that I have this negative sign. So if I have that negative sign, let's do one first step to get rid of it. Well, remember that in order to get rid of the negative, I can come down here and write this with a positive exponent by putting it over 1. So that negative exponent that I had before is actually a positive exponent when it comes down below. Alright, now I'm going to simplify this. So I have 1, well, the 4th, 64, the cube root of 64, we did that up here, the cube root of 64 is 4. So right here I have 4 to the 4th power. Let me write this out in case you didn't follow that. So in this case I have 64 cubed root, all raised to the 4th power. And then I have v to the 12 over 3 power. So let's simplify that. I just multiplied 3 times 4/3. Okay, 64 to the 1/3 power is 4, so I have 4 to the 4th times 12 divided by 3 is 4 times v to the 4th. And let's just write it like this. This is the simplest to write it. This whole thing to the 4th. So that's my final answer. Alright, let's try another harder one. Alright, now in this case we have the negative, so let's just take the reciprocal of this whole thing. So that becomes n squared over m to the 3/2 n to the 1/2 times m, this whole thing to the 1/2 power. Okay, now that before I do a power of power and distribute this 1/2 to all of these powers, let's simplify the m and the m. Down here, let's look at this as n squared and let's combine these like terms. M to the 3/2 is m to the 1/1 power. If I add these, this is like m to the 2/2 is the same as 1. So that would give me m to the 5/2 times n to the 1/2. This whole thing to the 1/2 power. Because I have like terms, I can just add the exponents. Now let's distribute this. So n squared times 1/2, that gives me n to the 1st. M to the 5/2 times 1/2 gives me m to the 5/4. N to the 1/2 times n to the 1/2 gives me n to the 1/4. And we're almost done here, except now we have n and an n. Well, this is n to the 4 over 4. And remember, if we have like bases, we can subtract the exponents. So on top I get n to the 3/4. On the bottom I got m to the 5/4. Since all of these are to the 1/4, I can say that's the same thing as n cubed over m to the 5th. And I can raise the whole thing to the 1/4 power, or I can just do the 4th root of it. So let's leave it like that. Okay, this example. Let's say that this example we are evaluating or simplifying. Or simplify. Either one means the same. Okay, so the first case, let's keep the 2 to the negative 3 on top. And we have 2 squared times, and let's just simplify this. So 4 times negative 2 gives me 2 to the negative, and I'm going to multiply those 8. I'm going to keep the top still. And now I have a power of, or product of powers. Product of powers, I'm going to add those. That gives me 2 to the negative 6. And in this case, I have the same base, different powers, so I'm going to subtract the exponents. So minus a negative 6. And that gives me negative 3 plus 6 is a positive 3, so that gives me 2 cubed. And 2 cubed is 8, so my final answer is 8. Alright, this should help you with the problems that are on the worksheet.